Hello, everyone. I'm Robin Fleck, and I see some faces that were here last week, so I thank you for returning. And to those of you that this is your first time, these virtual trainings are just a little snippet to share some information and thoughts with all of you. I work with April Perkins as a consultant with the ESOL department in the Maine Department of Education. And the Department of Ed is, trying to do some of these virtual trainings, outreach as a response, or people are looking for information. So last week was sort of some basics on language acquisition and the WIDA can-do descriptors. And this week we're going to talk a little bit about tools and resources for working with English learners. And then next week we will actually get more specific into differentiation strategies that can be used with students at the varying levels of language proficiency. So we didn't really promote it as a sequence of, but I have set it up that way. And the sessions are being recorded. And I got a little smarter this time and started it right when I started talking. If you refer someone else to it, tell them not to pay any attention to the first few minutes. But I was just chatting. So it helps me if you can maybe in the chat indicate what grade level, age level you work with the English learners. Well, it helps me a little bit to know who my audience is. If you would be willing to do that, just you can type it into the chat. And while you're doing that, I just want to say that maybe a few of you were with us on the Zoom yesterday, the ELL Zoom, but if this is a difficult time for all of us, in the world, actually. And, we have students who personally experience, acts of racism and bias on a regular basis. And you are the people that are used to seeing those students on a day-to-day basis and are such a value in how you support those students and their families. And we just want you to know that the Department of Education has the intention of trying to be supportive of you as we move forward and you try to do that. I know that the school year is winding up, and I don't know how much contact you've been able to have with your students and in terms of around, what's happening with in communities and within families. But these multilingual learners, many of them are having a high level of anxiety, but also passion about what's going on. So we encourage you to reach out and talk to your peers, talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to your neighbors, so that you can be comfortable talking about the issues of racism and color and bias and the inequities that can occur within education. And so when you can talk about it amongst yourselves, then it makes it a little bit easier. It's a tough topic, but a little bit easier to engage your students with those conversations. But I just wanted you to know the Department of Ed is available to support people with those issues. All right, let's see if I can look at the chat now. Okay, we've got from pre-K, and I know Carrie's high school, so we've got the whole gamut here. All right, well, the video I'm going to share with you today is middle school, so that's good. I picked the middle this time. Last week we had younger children. All right, I'm going to try to get to my PowerPoint, and let's see if this works. Okay. Can you see that? Can someone give me a yes, thank you, Carrie. Okay. All right, so that I'll come back to that at the end. That is my email address, and if anybody needs a certificate for a credit hour for doing this, and there is a PDF at the end I'm going to share with you, and if you want me to send you a copy of that, I'd be happy to do that if you make the request at this email. Okay. All right, let me see. So we must meet children where they are. We must understand them well to teach them well, and we must offer the right amount of supports and challenges for them to grow. And part of what we're going to talk about today is it's easy to have a whole list of these are the things that you are supposed to do, but why do we do those things? And how do we choose supports? We know that one size doesn't fit all in anything that we do, okay? Which is why when I do my presentations, I try to have visuals and not me just, yakking at you, so that you have multiple ways to support. And I'm sure in your classrooms you do the same thing. So before we actually get to some of those tools, I want us to think a little bit about the students that we teach. And I spoke about that. Let's see, move this over. Can you see that, or you can see it all right? Oh, thank you, Carrie. Carrie keeps helping me out, nodding. All right, so your expectations, all right? And before we get into this chart, I want you to think about the assets that your students bring with them when they come to school. They bring linguistic assets, they bring cultural assets, they bring experiential assets, and they bring social and emotional assets with you. I'll give you an example in terms of experiential. There are many countries where a school requires a lot of memorization of text or memorization of what the teacher has presented. Students are not necessarily encouraged to express their own thoughts and opinions and use higher level thinking skills, but they are required to be able to parrot back what they've learned. And of course, that doesn't serve them well in some respects with the way we teach in the US. However, those students have a strength in knowing how to memorize something. And there are times when being able to memorize something can be an asset. So memorizing mathematical formulas, science theories, and we can use the skill of being able to memorize with language, and having students memorize rhymes, short poems, as their language expands, readers' theater, having them memorize their parts. Because as they're in the beginning, it's some rote memorization of that rich language in the poem, but eventually, as they repeat it over and over as they're memorizing, they're internalizing some of that, and they're going to have those language models. And so there might be metaphorical language that they're memorizing at that particular moment. They're not necessarily understanding all of it. It's a teaching moment, but it becomes a part of them. So that's just one small example. Are there any questions when I say about those assets, what I mean by a cultural asset, a linguistic asset, social and emotional, or experiential? And I don't know, you can unmute yourself if you have a question. Anybody? No, we're good on that? Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about expectations. As always, you want to know, what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. So you need to get specific about your content and your language goals for each lesson. So you have content goals for your lesson, but what are the language goals? What language does that student need in order to be able to access the content at the highest level? And if we expect that a student, well, they only have a level 2 language, okay, they're just emerging with their language, but so they're not going to be able to get the higher level concepts, okay? Think about yourself, your teachers. If you went to another country, all right, and you didn't, or you just had a basic grasp of the language, and another teacher said, well, tell me how you teach reading. All right. You could probably figure out a way to demonstrate, illustrate, label, put together a chart. You could put a little something together with a little bit of language that could show your thought process. And so that's what I want to encourage people to do, to not think that we have to bring down the cognitive level of the content just because the language level may not be at what you consider grade appropriate or age appropriate level. And it happens a lot. And we need to be very mindful that we can have high expectations for our students, but they need the support of the language. What are the language goals? If we're asking them to compare, then we need to give them the academic language to be able to be comparative. Okay. Engage and observe. All right. You want to engage your English learners in tasks that relate to your goals. And you want to identify as they're working, what are their assets? And then what are their needs? So sometimes, we've all done this. We plan out a lesson and we think it's great. And when I say this, I mean this for any students. We think it's great, and we get into it and we realize, boy, this just isn't hitting the mark, and I've got to switch gears. And you try to figure out when it didn't work, well, why didn't it work? Okay. I mean, if it didn't work for 80% of the students in your room, then you know that the information has to be presented in a different way, or something has to change. So you want to look at what are the assets and needs for the support, and become very specific about that, not just pull the next strategy out of the air. If you're going to do something different, why are you doing it different? Okay. Just to be very intentional. And then the support, choosing and using instructional supports that will help English learners build from their assets to thrive towards their expectations. Okay, towards the expectations. So your academic goals and your language goals again. And if any of you have the opportunity to collaborate with the English learner teacher, or we have English learner teachers here that collaborate with content teachers, this is where you can have a really nice kind of marriage, where your content area teacher has those academic goals, and this is what they're going to be doing, within the unit. And then the English learner teacher can be looking at, okay, what's the academic language that we need to teach within this? And I think you'll find that the general population also benefits from having those language goals infused into the academic instruction. Language has become much less formal, and we use the word stuff a lot rather than being specific to the academic language. So most of what I'm saying is applicable to all students. It's good teaching. And I touched on this, reflecting. Okay, so reflecting on what was the effect or impact of your supports within the lesson or unit, and think about how are you going to refine your approach the next time. Always thinking in mind that you're going to increase the level of student-directed success. We have to be very careful that we are not, we walk a fine line. We don't want to prop our students up so much that they become dependent on that support. And so that's where the observation piece comes in, that it's there when they need it, and then you gradually, you try pulling some away and you observe, can they do it? And keep checking, always in mind that they have the opportunity to achieve success with that. Okay, I am going to show you a video now, and it's middle school English class, but this teacher, he collaborates with teachers in other subjects. And I'd like you, as you're watching, to be thinking about this process of expect, engaging and observing, supporting, and reflecting. So, what do you see of this process within the video? All right, so let's see if I can make this happen now. Okay, you're all still there. That's good. Okay. This worked when I practiced it.
Robin, this is what happens in a real classroom all the time.
I don't know how you've all been doing it, honestly. It's like I actually didn't sleep very well last night worrying that this was going to happen. Oh my goodness. All right, we'll move this around and let's see if we can bring it up this way.
Robin, what happens if you take it out of the link and just, like, if you stop sharing your screen with us for a second, and like if you copy the link and just put it in a new window?
Oh my gosh, what is that? Oh my, well, we don't want that, that's for sure. Okay. All right, so,
Yeah, try unsharing your screen.
okay, stop share. Okay. This is a really good video too. So let me see if I go. I know Laura's laughing at me, but you can all relate, right? All right, let's see if I do this again. Because when I had the full screen before, oh, I think it's going to work. Oh, yay, I did it. Doesn't take much to get me excited here. Okay. All right. Can you see it?
Not yet.
Yeah?
No.
Can you see that?
Can't see it yet.
So what you have to do, I learned this from my Spanish kids, you have to stop sharing the screen and then go click on the video screen that you want to go and then go back to sharing the screen.
Okay, so I have to stop sharing the screen.
Yep.
Okay.
Now go like move things around on your computer so that you can find, is the video up somewhere on your
Yep.
desktop?
Yep.
Okay, so now go to share screen, and then when you have the little box to pick, go straight to that little box. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank
Okay.
you, Laura.
Well, I've been Zooming with my Spanish kids, so they tell me these things.
Okay. All right. You see it?
I think you have to go back to share
with
screen.
us?
Can you see it?
No.
Yeah, you have to go back to share screen.
Thought I did. Ay, ay, ay. Can you see?
Yay!
Yay. Oh, good. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to put it back to the beginning.
And could you,
I don't hear any sound.
yeah, I wasn't hearing anything.
Oh my gosh.
This wastes huge amounts of class time with students.
All right, so I've got to do this, the stop share. I've got to do the share screen and then share computer sound in those little boxes, right? I apologize, everybody.
My name is Andy Mizell,
Working?
and I'm going to tell you how a team of teachers put together this lesson on point of view so that my English learners could acquire and use academic vocabulary such as
point of view, perspective,
and
narrator.
to reach the objectives in this lesson.
2, 3.
The content objective we are going to practice today is analyzing point of view and the language objective that support that says I can identify and explain vocabulary terms, discuss different point of view, read, write, and discuss questions about the little page.
The first step I took when starting this lesson was communicating with one of the reading and language arts teachers at my school about how we could differentiate this lesson on point of view so that all students, not just English learners, could reach the objectives. I also collaborated with other content area teachers to see how could I connect my lesson on point of view to what they teach in their classroom.
since we're looking at perspective, some kids will see that, okay, they know that in order to solve for area of irregular figures, I have to find the area of the regular figures first. So here's a rectangle, and here's a rectangle. Another way some of my kids saw the same figure is they didn't see two big rectangles. They saw one little rectangle, and then they saw one big rectangle.
All right. So we have a circle. So we're trying to find the circumference of this circle.
Okay.
Well, interestingly enough, we have two different formulas that can get us there. Both formulas will get you to the same answer.
And the reason for collaborating like this was so that my students could make connections to what they are learning in their other classes while I teach them about point of view. To hook my students at the beginning of the lesson, I started off with a quick mix-pair share morning meeting activity so that the students could use the term point of view while talking about their own personal opinions and experiences.
From my point of view, the snow day experience was good because I went walking to the store and there was a lot of ice and snow. From my point of view, the snow day experience was bad because it was too cold to go outside. Howdy, partner. From my point of view, the snow day experience was good because I could play with the snow. From my point of view, the interim test has been hard because a lot of things that we didn't say came into this.
After doing a vocabulary pre-assessment, the students performed a leveled team interview, and each student did a specific level depending on their performance from the pre-assessment.
When you see something,
Help her say that word. There you go.
Yeah, okay. You have to, someone who tells a story. A narrator.
Yeah, okay.
Perspective is the way you see something. Point of view is the perspective from which the story is being told or narrated. A narrator is someone who tells a story.
Oh, well, if you can do that, then see if you can do the rest of level 5. Like, see if you can use the word perspective in a sentence. Point of view, 2, 3.
We just did a content objective about
Analyzing point of view and the language objective that supports that says.
I can identify and explain vocabulary terms.
Booyah! 1, 2, 3.
Booyah!
After team interview, we looked at and discussed different learning connections we could make to our content objective.
How does this math problem have different points of view or perspectives when it comes to how you can solve it?
This math problem has different point of view or perspective when it comes to how you can solve it because you can use two different ways to solve this problem.
It looks like just some weird, odd shape, an irregular shape, which is going to lead us into our next portion, math connection, Miss Hill.
This math problem is
Has
different point of view or perspective when it comes to how you solve it.
because
When I look at this irregular shape from my point of view or perspective, I would break it apart like this.
now come. Okay. Good. Okay. Now he did it that way, but maybe somebody else, Caesar, is there a different way, a different point of view or perspective to do it? Nice. Good.
The students also discussed different points of view by choosing a character and completing this sentence starter while practicing using the academic vocabulary.
Mom was the narrator for this story. Then from her perspective point of view, the story will sound like exciting and fun. The student in college was the narrator of this story. Then
from his
point of view, the story would sound like this. Oh, I'm so tired, so I don't want to go to school.
3.
We just did the author objective about analyzing point of view and the language objective that supports that says I can discuss different point of view.
Boom! 1, 2, 3.
After the students watched a short video clip of the original story of the Three Little Pigs, they each were assigned a partner or group to read the true story of the Three Little Pigs, which is written from the wolf's point of view.
But I'll let you know in a real secret. Nobody knows the real story.
The whole pig bad thing is all wrong. The real story is about a sneeze and a cup of sugar.
Next person.
He called,
Little pig, are you in? No answer.
The whole big bad thing is all wrong. The real story is about.
As each set of students finished reading, they began working on writing answers to some higher order questions about the text before we did our exit pass.
It says, what can you say about point of view, perspective, and narrator when it comes to the two versions of the Three Little Pigs? You can either answer the difficult way, medium, or easy.
The students reflected on the lesson by completing their exit passes and sharing them with partners in a cooperative learning structure. And this is what one student said about comparing 2 points of view of the Three Little Pigs while using the academic vocabulary.
Okay, go ahead. New partner.
Are different when it comes to the point of view, perspective, and narrator. Because the wolf has its own point of view, and the pig do too. The wolf's perspective is like he didn't do anything bad, but the pig's perspective is way different from the wolf's. The narration is way different because in the first version that we saw, he just wanted to blow their houses down to eat them. In the second one, he wanted the cup of sugar.
3.
We just did the concept objective about analyzing point of view and the language objective that supports that says I can read, write, and discuss questions about the Little Pigs.
Yeah! 1, 2, 3.
I learned that they're like the same stories can be different from the point of views or the point they've been told.
I learned that about perspective and point of view and narrator.
We learned how people can have their different opinions and like different sayings that they from their point of view.
You had to read the story with a partner.
That wasn't boring. It was like the normal ones.
What makes it not boring? What's usually something that is boring?
We don't talk.
What's something that we do in here all the time that like makes it not boring? In that lesson, what did you get to do? Okay.
About the exit pass, like I like how you had those 3 different things, and then like we had to pick one of them.
It kept people focused when you did easy, easy, medium, and difficult because people can know their levels.
I feel like the lesson went really well in regards to the reaching the content objective, because my ultimate goal was for the students to be able to analyze point of view while also using that academic vocabulary, because they could have talked about an analyzed point of view without using that academic vocabulary. I wish I had had more time to complete the lesson. I felt rushed in some classes. I had to finish reading the story as a whole group so that we could make sure we got to the exit pass. I'm really an advocate for cooperative learning because I feel like it gets rid of the boredom that kids would have in school. And in this lesson, I felt like I had enough cooperative learning structures to keep the students engaged the whole time, which I feel like they were. My experience with collaborating with the other teachers was that it was very quick and easy, because when I talked to Miss Hill about connecting point of view to math, I talked with her in the teacher workroom while she was making copies on the copier, and it took me about 2 minutes.
Okay, let's see, stop share. Oh, good, we're back. Okay. Observations, reactions? Did it connect to what we just talked about in terms of expect, engage, observe, reflect?
I have a question.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Marie. I'm an ed tech.
Marie?
And wasn't this on the WIDA website, this film?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because I have watched it. And I loved it. And I'm an ed tech for ELL, but I'm a retired art teacher. So I just wanted to put a plug in that this teacher could have collaborated beautifully with art, because Cubism is all about a point of view and aerial views, ground views, perspectives, all kinds of lovely things. And I really did enjoyed watching it on the WIDA site, very much so because of all the visualization, geometry, which was the only math I did any good in, because it was about seeing. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Marie. It's absolutely important to remember our arts, music education, health, and all the other enrichment and activities that can be incorporated into our lessons. And any other thoughts, reactions when you see this?
I did have some thoughts. One was, it was very inspiring. And I noticed that not only did he structure it to include all those elements for himself, but also for his students. They were focusing on specific goals, and they were focusing on academic tasks and language goals, and they were figuring out what support they needed, and then the exit ticket helped them reflect on what they had learned. And also all that, every time they did something, he went through that, those lists of objectives on the board. So the kids were very, very conscious and specific about their content and language goals. So that was really interesting. The other thought I had is, because I'm in a low incidence district, even though I have students in many grade levels, I mostly see them one-on-one. So it's sometimes hard for me to figure out how I would translate those kind of lessons into my meetings with one student. It's a really different atmosphere.
It is a different atmosphere, and it really depends on your situation. But sometimes if you are supporting with content, and you have a relationship with the teacher, and you have a specific your objectives that you're working with, and you can find out from the teacher, is there another student or a few other students that might benefit from the lesson that you're going to do, and you can do a group. And again, it depends on the environment as to whether you can push in and be a part of the lesson in the classroom, or if you're tutoring and you're in a separate space, maybe you even have some students that missed a particular lesson, and you're going to be going over it. Whenever you can get yourself connected with the mainstream and have peers to work within a small group, it's always beneficial for everybody, because kids would rather talk to other kids. We're safe people as their instructors, all right, in a one-on-one setting, and someone who's a newcomer, and you'll have students that will talk to you when they don't dare to speak in class, because they know they don't sound like everybody else or they don't feel confident yet. But if you can invite a few kids in and find different ways to be creative about doing that, I encourage you to seek that out. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Paula Doucette. I'm an elementary ELL teacher in South Portland. And I guess that video just kind of hit home for me at how far away we are with remote learning from the classroom, and the work that we've done in the last few months. It's so important. But if we go back to remote learning in the fall, how do we support the content and the language? Right now we started just getting families with internet and devices. And I do see a few students on Zoom, Google Meets one-on-one, but for the broad caseload, how to meet those content and language objectives in a rigorous way, not just triage, if this is going to be a longer term way that we need to teach, and what kind of connections do we need to make with the classroom teachers who are putting up their own remote curriculum. It's a little overwhelming to think about, but I think it will be important as an ELL cohort in Maine to have those discussions in September if we're back in this situation.
Thank you for bringing up that point. And Carrie, I'm remembering last week you said that in your science class you had collaboration with the English learner teacher, but as we went to remote learning, that sort of fell apart. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes. We're trying to reestablish those. Actually, Laura and I are working a little bit together on that, but it's hard because again, once we got kids devices, they're still speaking their native language all day long at home instead of being immersed in school all day long. And I've lost them generally. But I will say that your suggestion about immersing them in group work, and I think we talked about this a little bit last week, is I had 5 or 6 of them in a regular science class, so I had the advantage of sending them out into groups of other students, and that was very successful.
So for those of you that have much more experience with Zoom than I do, I'm wondering, I know there's this thing called Breakout Rooms, and the, partnering that we saw students do, is that something that can happen in the Zoom platform? Obviously, it's not the same as face-to-face contact, but are the breakout rooms an option, Laura?
Yeah, so there's a button at the bottom, and we could practice now if you want to. I don't have it on, but there's a button at the bottom that says Breakout Rooms. And then you click that button, and then you decide where we go. You can either assign us, or you can just pick it randomly, where you can be like, I want groups of 2, or I want groups of 4. And then you can pop in and out of other groups.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you that the difference between Zoom breakout rooms and classroom breakout rooms is that in the classroom, I can stand in this corner and I can hear what is happening way over there. And in Zoom, you have no idea. So when you pop into someone's group, they see you. So if they were, unless you catch the very first 2 words that they were saying, they can switch topics real quick. So in an EL setting, like they could be in all Spanish in my world, right? Or in all Chinese. Or they could be doing nothing. They can say nothing and you won't know unless you click in on them. I have had, so that it is a good tool. I've had better luck with my Spanish kids with having them, with my Americans, with having them write in the chat. I'm like, I ask a question and nobody will say a word. And I'm like, fine, write in the chat, write in the chat, write in the chat. And then you watch the chat just scroll and then you can be like, oh, Kathy, you've been in a breakout room. Can you tell me more about that? Like you just look at it and you call people out that way. And it has some success. That's been my experience. I can ask my child who's behind me, but I probably won't ask her right now. But she would probably have more experience too. She says no. Okay.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think we're all learning. We're all trying to figure this out, and it certainly is. It's the best that we had, and people have, from what I've heard about and seen, people have really put in so much time to try to optimize the situations that they've had. But yeah, it's not the same as all being together in the classroom. But certainly your point about, figuring out how to collaborate and coordinate is something that we need to keep working on and consider and try to put some heads together to figure that out. Is there anything else anybody wanted to say? There's something I really wanted to be sure that you get to see before we end. And if I have the same kind of luck, I'm trying to build myself a little bit more time. But I'm seeing Kathy saying kids may have stayed on topic more when you were part of the group, Kathy. The teacher was with one group, student teacher was with another. Oh, so when you did breakout rooms, Kathy, you were able to monitor them? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, she divided the class into 3 groups, and we each put one adult in each group. So they may have stayed on topic more because of that. I don't know. That was the first time I had ever done the breakout room, and it went okay. And after a while, they're like, okay, what are we supposed to talk about? Anything else? They started floundering a little, but then she called them back right after that anyway. So.
No. I'm hearing that the students are really just tired of the online learning in the format.
I'm sure
I actually heard one teacher suggest that you tell the kids that you can hear all the breakout rooms, even though you can't. And maybe eventually they'll figure it out, but just tell them you can hear them and you can observe them, and maybe they'll keep talking. I haven't tried it with mine, but.
It's a little bit like when I would say to students, I know what you just said, and that was not nice. Please don't say it again. And I really didn't know what they had said, but from the tone of their voice and the intent of the way they said it to another person, you could just tell it wasn't something kind. And they always went, oh, okay. Usually someone would tell them. All right, I'm gonna try to share this next piece. All right, okay. And we don't need sound. Okay. All right. Okay. All right, I'm gonna skip over that. This slide presentation can be available to you because we went over this bit about what we saw. And then this piece I referred to, can you all see that chart? Is it big enough? Laura's saying no. Okay, let's see. There, can you see it now? All right, so in the observing piece, if you are in a group setting and you use a chart like this, and a version of this chart is available on the WIDA website. And the WIDA website has so many resources for you. But if you know that you have students in the varying levels and you plug in their names in this classroom chart, when you are planning and thinking about supports, it can help you. So the teacher who had the 3 different levels of exit slips, say, all right, they're turning those in. And if you consistently see that someone who is working within, level 4 is choosing the easy exit slip on a regular basis, then you might want to make a personal connection with that student. But as you're planning your lesson, if you know, all right, I've got a few students at level 2, 1 at level 3, and then I've got 2 in level 4. So how am I going to structure my lesson? What supports are these varying levels of students going to need, and what language? And then remembering, okay, this level 2 student needs 2-step directions. So how is that going to tailor what I plan and how I give my directions? All right, I've got 5 steps here. Am I going to give all 5 steps and then circle back and break it down into 2s? Or am I just going to do it by 2s for everybody? I mean, you can all figure that out. We actually have gotten administrative support at a building level one year, actually a few years, where we took a little bit of time at a pre-service day before school started, and classroom, this is at an elementary level, classroom teachers had the individual learning plans of the students, and they had these charts, and we had English learner staff available for support, and they were asked to complete these charts before school started so that they had them. And then, of course, we get to the next level when you have classes that switch. Okay, how are we going to do that? And that's where using a Google Doc and posting online and sharing information that way made it easier for teachers to do that. And once we spent time with teachers and sort of explained how you do this, then the teachers, gave feedback that it was really helpful to them. And then, they could do it on their own if they just, had the chart in the Google Doc. So something to think about. I know everybody going back to school, something like this isn't going to be a priority, but just something to think about, and maybe you have one teacher you can introduce it to, someone that might be more willing. But again, just something I wanted to share. Okay, let's see. How are we doing for time? Okay, so the last slide is this academic toolkit. And I'm gonna have to stop sharing. And then, oh my goodness. Oh, okay, there it is. Okay, did it make it? You see something? Okay, academic language function toolkit. And this has been a resource. Laura's shaking her head. She's familiar with it, okay? And it's been, I've had a lot of very positive reactions to this and sharing this with classroom teachers, okay? Because it's written in a way that's very easy to use, and it's based on the work of Kate Kinsella. And if you don't know Kate Kinsella, down here, and like I said, this is on a PDF, and I can send this to you if you send me that email. Okay, but I'm going to scroll through. But Kate Kinsella out of California has done some really great work around building academic language and ways to incorporate activities into the classroom. So there's all these various resources. So here, okay, seeking information, all right, and then you've got the language. What are the words when you're seeking? language of inquiry. And here's a whole list of them. Expressing an opinion, some ideas for graphic organizers. But teaching students this language so that they know more than one way to say something and how to respond, and modeling that within the classroom and expecting that language to be used in written assignments. One of the things that we're seeing with the access scores is that speaking scores are low. And that seems to be heard from across the country, all right? And that's being looked at, but if we can get all classrooms to be bringing in the academic language in their instruction throughout the day, my guess is it would be good for everybody. So as you can see, you've got all these varied activities and language. And like I said, classroom teachers right through grade 12 have appreciated this information as they were trying to design lessons and think of what supports they might want to incorporate into their units and daily lessons all the way through. And this is free, so I'm not like plagiarizing anything. It was designed to be available to teachers. And here's an observation and feedback tool. Student discussion guides. Teacher guide. Carrie, do you think something like this might be useful? Yeah, okay. All right, so like I said, I'll put let's see, this here. It came from Sweetwater Union High School District. And like I said, Kate Kinsella's work, she worked with them and it became available as an option, but I will share this PDF with all of you. Okay, so, all right. Am I back to you? Yeah, okay. All right. Well, gosh, that time went by pretty quick, and I apologize that some of it was me fumbling around. But does anybody have any questions, comments? Like I said, next week there will be more specific strategies to use with students at the various language proficiency levels. So some of this was a little more general today so that you could take the general information to apply to the specifics. So the link for contact hours, Lorene, if you email me at robin.fleck@maine.gov, and I will send you a contact hour certificate, and anybody else that needs it. robin.fleck@maine.gov.
Robin.
Yes.
This was very interesting and helpful, and next week's sounds very interesting and helpful too. I anticipate that we'll be teaching at least partly online again next year. There's a good possibility, and we are inundated with online teaching resources, so many that I don't even have time to look at them. Is there someone who could give us a kind of distillation of ones that might be particularly helpful?
Are you aware of the Google Doc that really through the ELL Zoom meetings we started to put together?
Yeah, I
That's
think so.
okay, all right. So are you finding that document is too expansive? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I'll have to go back through it. I'm getting new resources in my email every day.
So do you think it's helpful to have it organized by language proficiency level, grade level? How would it be most helpful to have resources organized?
For me, it would be more helpful to just have fewer options, but I'd have to think about organization.
It would be great if you could think about it and either let myself or April know. We're hoping to get information from teachers about what they need to be prepared for potential remote learning in our future. And there's a whole process for getting, the questions are written and we just have to get the stamp of approval. And April's, got that going through. So April, if you're there, can you comment on if we will be having that go out to teachers?
Yeah, so I've been a bit of a fly on the wall today. I'm just kind of listening in the background. But yes, we are going to be sending out a survey. It should be approved soon. So my intention is hopefully to let folks know about that more in depth in our final ESOL Educators Zoom meeting, which is next Wednesday at 4 p.m. So we'll talk about it then. We'll share the link. I believe it will be ready by then. And we do want to know what other supports, what resources you need. And Andrea, I think you make a good point. There's just so much coming at teachers right now. It's unbelievable. So the more simplified and just directing you to those absolutely stellar resources so you don't have to spend the time combing through is something that we could certainly help with.
And another one thing that I'm thinking is resources that teachers have used and found helpful and what their situation is. Like for me, it would be most helpful to have resources that you're using with only 1 or 2 students, whereas for someone else, it would be way more helpful to have resources that you're using with a whole class.
Yeah. So Robin mentioned in the Google Classroom that I set up a few months ago. And if you're not yet a member of that Google Classroom, feel free to email me and I'll be happy to send you the info about that. It's april.perkins@maine.gov. But inside that Google Classroom, there is a spreadsheet where we started compiling resources. And I was hopeful that more teachers would contribute and be willing to be resources to each other to talk about how they're using the various resources. That didn't pan out as much as I would have liked it to. So Robin and I added a number of things and a couple of teachers chimed in, but I would really like to see teachers telling each other about what they're doing and what's working well for them, because I think that's the best kind of support is peer support. So hopefully we can get that to get some forward motion.
And the Weeder Educator Exchange Facebook group is turning out to be quite a nice resource, and you have people being specific about the resource and who the students are that they're using it with. So you can kind of scroll through, and if you're working at high school one-to-one, you can, quickly sort of go through that. And I've clicked on several of the resources and been quite impressed. So you've got other ESOL educators sharing. So I would recommend that. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you all being here. I appreciate your support with my amateur Zoom skills, but I'll get better just like the rest of you. And I hope that if you can't join us next week, it will be recorded and you'll find a chance to check in with the recording and let your peers know that these sessions are being recorded. Thank you, everyone.